Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And today we're back with a couple topics that are just a little bit haunting.
Indeed. I have no idea what you're covering, but mine is, in fact, a haunting. So, good stuff. Getting back to the roots.
Mine is a haunting-ish, if you want to believe that it's haunting or poltergeist or something. Gives me very similar vibes to other cases, so we'll see.
Okay. I still have no idea what you're going to be covering because you didn't say the name of the topic, but I guess I'll find out a little bit later. I'm going to be covering the Capitol Theater hauntings. So I'm pretty excited to cover it too. And I'm excited because I've been sitting on this topic for about 2 effing weeks now. Because in case you didn't notice, 2 weeks ago, there was not an episode that came out. Last week, we had a story time come out that we recorded live because I was super sick. Started to get better, so we're like, let's record a live story time so folks can come out, hang out, we'll read some stories. That went super well. And I think it was because we were in such close proximity, probably not during that, it's probably during the fact that we, lived together. Robin got sick as I got better, so by the time the next week rolled around where it was time to do the episode, she was sick as fuck.
Yeah, I got pretty sick. It was miserable. I hated it. I feel really bad because I feel like I got half the office sick.
She went in to work on Monday, and I was like, you should not go in. You are sick. She's like, I just have so much to do. So she went in.
What's with my old lady voice?
It's because that's your weak, sick voice.
Oh, got it.
And she was home by 11 a.m. because her boss sent her home because she was fucking sick. But yeah, so you're, I wouldn't say you're Typhoid Mary. And you're definitely not patient zero. I don't think I'm patient zero. I don't know where we got it from, but yeah, you definitely infected a lot of people.
Yeah,
so.
It's because you infected me, you infectious little dirty
I stayed
monster.
at home the whole time, so it's because you're lazy and you're always just like, do you have any water? You just drink my water rather than get your own. But yeah, we're happy to be back. We're happy to be healthy enough to be doing the episode.
Yeah, I've been working on the topic that I'm covering this week for a week and a half. So, it's fun.
Yeah. The other thing I will say is that we had a really good time doing the story time. And we were able to because we had a few homegrown horrors, which are the stories that you folks send us about ghost stories or paranormal, true crime, extraterrestrial, and it's things that's happened to you or a friend or a family member. And we had some that we could read, and we don't get a lot anymore. I think a lot of folks have already sent in their stories and we don't talk about it as much. But if you guys would like to hear more Storytime episodes or hear your story read on the show, please email storytime@scaryish.com or hit us up on our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/Scaryish podcast. Twitter is @ScarishPod and Instagram is @ScarishPodcast. We would love to hear from you because we want to start doing more live broadcasts. So yeah, fun stuff. Just want to toss that out there. We don't usually plug it during the normal show, but we do it at the end. And I think a lot of people skip the end. So, which is like where the golden stuff is. I once had a completely different song as our outro and no one even noticed it.
That's where oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
The end is always where the twist happens.
It is. Every episode, well, I shouldn't say that. Lots of episodes have, ramblings and some episodes have a twist.
It's like that last Halloween movie, the one before the one that just came out.
Didn't see it.
Oh my God.
Keep going over this. You've asked me to watch it like 3 times in the last week. Still haven't seen it.
Shit pops off at the end.
It's good to know. It's also good to know that you watch these movies without me. Anyways, I believe I'm going first this week, if I am not mistaken.
Yeah, you go, girl.
Okay, cool. So this week, we're actually doing a topic episode because, like I mentioned, we're finally healthy. So hooray for that. And when I say healthy, I mean physically. Mentally, I'm a fucking mess up in this old dome piece. It's a bunch of fucking cobwebs and monkeys banging on drums.
Oh man, yeah. Sometimes I just walk around and I'm like, kill me.
I had this thought the other day, and it was like, I don't think I've ever in my life been suicidal, had intrusive thoughts like that, because like I have friends that have talked to me about stuff like that before, and it is kind of a serious topic. And I remember telling a friend one time, like, I'm not like that. I haven't had that happen, but I've definitely been depressed enough where I'm just like, I just don't mind if I die. And I'm not like that right now or anything like that, but you ebb and you flow when it comes to dealing with like mental instability sometimes. And I'm definitely at a time right now where things are a bit rocky. So.
I think the older I get, the more the more anxiety I have. You know, when you
Yeah.
grow up, when you're growing up, you're so carefree and you have no worries and everything's fine and dandy. Your parents pay for all your shit.
Yeah, you don't have any responsibilities.
And then you become an adult and you're just like, I got all these bills. It's my turn to start taking care of parents. Like, it's just...
That's something that's it's a really weird shift when you realize how much you wish you could take care of your parents.
Yeah.
And I imagine that the next stage in life is being proud of the fact that you can. But yeah, still waiting to get to that stage. I am
not prepared.
As a kudos to myself, as a pat on the back I gave myself, is like, I am much more functional while being fucked up than I used to be. So that's a good thing. And I am proud of that because I can still go to work. I'm not looking to like call off or anything like that. So that's a pretty big step. But
Okay, so the day you call off is the day I'm going to be worried.
no, it's the day you need to, leave me alone and not be mean to me. So, but anyways, it's nice to have a topic episode because it's kind of therapeutic to do the show every now and then. And I have a fun story to tell you folks, and I hope you enjoy it. I've been wanting to cover a haunted location for a while and kind of get back to the ghost stories because a lot of times we kind of veer off that topic, or we do a lot more true crime nowadays, I think, than we used to. So
yeah, but I mean, true crime is always, it's real life, right? It's always going on. So
I think it is scarier than a lot of the ghost stories.
I think it's scarier because I think people are far more horrifying than the idea
it's
of
the lesson of it's like the trope of so many shows, like, and the human beings were the monsters the whole time.
Yeah.
But we're going to do ghost story. For me, I love them so much, so I finally get to bring to you the Capitol Theater Hauntings.
Capital or Capitol?
Capital. I think I spelled it Capitol. Now, some of you might hear that and think, oh snap, he's covering the Capitol Theater. I know where that is. But as I learned while researching this topic, there are a fuck ton of places called the Capitol Theater all over the country, and I would guess the world at large. It's probably just in a different language called like El Capital. So
El Capital. Oh my god. Well, there's
probably wrong.
Okay.
Just saying. The Capitol Theater that I'm going to be covering in this particular topic is the one from Salt Lake City in Utah, in the United States of America. So apologies if you thought it was going to be your Capitol Theater, and it wasn't. I apologize. Just go ahead and email us the ghost stories from your Capitol Theater, and I'd be happy to read those in story time. Oh my god, I came back around again.
Okay.
So these particular...
Was that on purpose?
No, just kind of happened.
All right.
So this particular Capitol Theater didn't actually start out as the Capitol Theater. It was opened at 50 West 200 South, which is the address for it to this day, in downtown Salt Lake City in 1913. And it was originally called the Orpheum Theater. It operated under that name until 1927, 14 years later, when they made the switch to the name the Capitol Theater.
I think the original name is way cooler.
Okay, Orpheum. I'm not sure what that means. Sounds like orphanage mixed with Morpheus, and then there's an M in there for some reason.
Okay.
So when it was built, it had some amenities that weren't really common back in the day, like air conditioning, which is amazing in 1913. It sounds like a time-traveling Adam Diaz designed this place because I fucking hate it when it's hot. Like, I love the cold. And I mean...
You say you love the cold.
I mean cold. Like, ideal temperature is if you go into that vegetable area at Costco, that's where I'd like to live.
No.
With an industrial fan at the top spinning at max speed. That is ideal.
Adam literally, okay, today I'm driving home from work and he goes, by the way, I turned the heat up because it's so cold.
I said it's cold. Because it's 67. We keep the house at 67, and outside it's 40 degrees, and I had to open the door to let the dogs out. And then they came inside, and I'm like, I don't want the dogs getting sick because it's too cold, even though I know that's not going to happen for them. I just wanted to turn the heat up a little bit, because sometimes a chill seeps into my old man bones, and I need to make sure it doesn't turn into, like, I don't know, cholera? What do you get when you're as old as I am?
I just think it's funny. You're like, I love it when it's cold.
I do.
And then you're like, I turned up the heat. It was too cold.
I love that you act like you have an opinion on temperature. This is Robin's opinion on temperature. If there's circulating air, it's cold. Doesn't matter if it's 100 degrees. If there's a fan on her, it's officially cold. That's what that means. If the heat's on, it could be 40 degrees in a fucking house. If there's a vent near her and she feels warm air blowing on her, it's hot. The house is hot. So I don't want to hear your bullshit. So annoying. She was fucking living in a house that was like 55 degrees when you were staying out in Corona. I went over there. I was like, this is the fucking coldest house I have ever been in my life. Like, if kids lived here, child services would take them. And she's like, I know what you mean. It's warm. And she's walking around barefoot. And I'm just like, I can't even fucking start right now.
I've been trained well.
You're just the worst. So anyways, hear me out. If you live like that, like the 55 degree, you probably wouldn't notice that you're haunted. You might notice a warm spot instead of a temperature drop. But you know what? It doesn't sound that bad. Now, it's not shocking that a theater could be haunted. When we're talking about haunted theaters, we've covered haunted places in the past. We've covered haunted plays in the past, like the one that isn't supposed to be named.
Macbeth.
Yeah, and you named it. Can you imagine?
Yeah, but I'm not on a... the curse is if you're... The curse is if you're in the play Macbeth.
Okay, if something bad happens, I'm going to point out that it was the curse of Macbeth.
You can't say it right in the theater.
I can't remember the rules, even though I did the topic. I remember all the people that did Macbeth and something bad happened to them. Can you imagine doing Macbeth in a haunted theater, though? Like, do you think it would double the hauntings, or would they, like, cross and cause exponential growth in one another? Or would they just straight up cancel each other out and everything will be fine? It's hard to tell, but let's concentrate on the theater that I'm about to cover.
Okay.
And then I'll send the suggestion email to convince them to do Macbeth there, and then we can just go see it. So, the theater didn't have many stories that are known when it comes to being haunted at first. This isn't one of those, like, built on a graveyard stories. The structure was said to be fireproof and earthquake resistant, which is my favorite way of insulting God that I've heard so far while you're still hedging your own bets. Like, you cannot burn this place. However, it will 100% fall down. It shouldn't, but yeah, it can't be burnt. So fireproof, fall down resistant.
Anytime throughout history, I've heard like it's impossible to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, in 1949, it burnt down. Just kidding, but a fire did start in the basement. Smoke started pouring out into the theater, and because it wasn't smoke-proof, some 600 guests had to evacuate, and they did manage to escape the smoke and flames without being hurt. But not everyone was so lucky. A 17-year-old named Richard Duffin, who was an usher at the Capitol Theater, had been helping people out of the basement where the fire had started and spread from, but collapsed when attempting to escape himself. He died of smoke inhalation, although some websites claim he was burned to death. The official account that I found...
I like that you run through that one real quick, but some sources say he burned to death.
The official account says smoke inhalation. So the account I found of the event claims that the fire was actually put out fairly quickly, but the damage was done. I mean, obviously, if you have a fire in a place, it's going to be pretty fucked up. 90 minutes after arriving on the scene, the SLCFD was... able to recover Richard's body after they had put out the fire. So it took them about 90 minutes after arriving on the scene to contain the fire, recover him, and be like, ooh, this dude died. The theater had been damaged, but not put completely out of commission because they were able to get it fixed up. But after this event, some strange shit started to happen. Now, the hauntings that happen in the Capitol Theater are supposedly caused by the ghost of Richard Duffin, but the nickname of the ghost at the theater is George. And George is not really a nickname for Richard. Richard has many nicknames. Rich, Rick, Dick, Chard, Archard, Rickard. These are all nicknames for Richard.
People call Ricks Chard.
I had a friend named Richard, and we called him Chard. We really did.
No, you didn't.
Not a joke. I will fucking text Lee right now, and he will confirm this. These are all nicknames for Richard, but George? Like, that's a completely different name, and I couldn't find anything that said that Richard Duffin's middle name was George, which would make sense. So it sounds to me like this was either an off-the-wall nickname that was given to him when he was alive and carried over into his death, or they gave him a new name once he was dead. Now, I don't know which one of these is the case. It could be neither. This could all be bullshit. But I do know that if I passed away, especially under tragic circumstances, and anyone renamed me after I died, I'd fucking haunt them too.
But I'm thinking about it this way, right? If people were like, you know, this place is haunted. And then one day some guy's like, you know what I'm going to name this ghost? George. And then Richard's
I would shake the house to the fucking ground.
Richard's like, are you kidding me? And then anytime he's like just annoyed, right? And then people are like, oh, George, stop it.
This gets more annoying.
Exactly. It's not going to stop.
This is a true story. I once worked at a job where I had 3 weeks of training. And during training, we had like a group of like 20 people, and we had 2 trainers that were going through and training us. And there was like this tiny little clique that formed during that training and there's like 3 people, and they thought they were the cool kids in the class. And rather than learn my name, like everyone was supposed to learn everyone's name in there, they decided that I looked like a Jeff, and they weren't going to learn my actual name. They were just going to call me Jeff. And they're kind of assholes about it too. Like they would deliberately call me Jeff loudly and then tell everyone that they gave me a new name because I look like a Jeff. And even after the training was done and we all went out into the floor and we started our jobs, they still call me Jeff. And one of the trainers asked me privately, like 2 weeks into the 3-week training, if it bugged me because he would tell them to stop. And I told him, like, no, I don't give a shit. You don't have to talk to them. And he's like, oh, that's cool of you. I'm like, no, because I'm going to be their boss soon. And if they call me Jeff, I'll fucking fire them. And he laughed. And sure enough, 80 days into that job, I got promoted 2 steps ahead of where I was. And 2 of them wound up reporting to me. So it's pretty dope. And I will say that 2 of those 3 people did wind up getting fired from the company while they reported to me. So that was nice.
Moral of the story is don't call people Jeff.
Don't call people names that is not their names, unless it's a sweet ass nickname. Like if they'd have been like, you look like a dragon, I'd have been like, oh my God, thank you. But they didn't. They call me Jeff. Anyone who's named Jeff, that's fine, but that's just not my fucking name.
I feel like if someone called you Dragon though too, you'd be like, y'all, you gotta stop calling me Dragon.
Dragon's gonna start breathing smoke if you keep calling me Dragon. No, I would have fucking been on board with that shit. Anyways, back to the Capitol Theater. After the death of George, people obviously felt like the vibe of the place had shifted, which, isn't shocking. Someone died there and there was a fire. It wasn't just a place to go hang out and watch performers do plays anymore. It was a place that a kid had died. He's 17 when he passed away. And small things started happening. A traumatic experience can make folks see things like shadows out of the corner of their eyes in places where maybe they had seen George, which I will call him from now on. Like they had seen George in that spot before, so they might think like, oh man, I used to see George here too. Like I thought I just saw George. But lights started turning on when they had been left off, and the sound of movement could be heard coming from rooms that were empty. And it didn't take long before folks started to say that George was still in the theater and he was making his presence known. It's said that there is a play that makes George most active when it's going to be the one performed. And no, it's not Macbeth. It's actually the Nutcracker. George is either a fan of the Nutcracker or not a fan of the Nutcracker.
I could see the Nutcracker being one of the ones that are, see most activity because it's so popular.
It is very popular.
Every year.
It's one of the ones that I saw when I was like in 5th grade. They took us on a vacation. It's not what kids get. They took us on a field trip and they told everyone like, hey, make sure you dress nice. Because if you don't dress nice and dress in a t-shirt, when we get there, you won't want to get off the bus because you'll be embarrassed because everyone there is going to be dressed really fancy. And we all dressed fancy and we still felt pretty underdressed, but it was pretty dope.
I've never seen it.
We should go see it. One of the stories comes from a stage manager of the theater named Doug Morgan. He said that during his time at the Capitol Theater, which came in the 90s, so obviously this is still happening because this is like 30 years ago, they had like just got done completing tests for the show to make sure everything was ready to go, and it was the Nutcracker that was going to be on. Everything had been checked, lights were on, power source was good, program for the lights was running. They left, they came back, they did final check, none of the lights would come on. They would not come on. Nothing had changed. Everything was still fine. The power source was still good. The lights were in the on position. The program was still running. They reset everything. They did everything they could. They could not get the stage lights to come on. They could not figure out why. So Doug walked onto the stage and yelled into the void, George, knock it off or I'm going to have you exorcised. And the legend of this story says that after yelling this into the darkness, the stage lights popped on and they were able to do the show that night.
I wonder if they popped on with an actual pop.
Like someone was, I don't know about that. I mean, they do pop, I think, if they all come on at once, but I bet you someone flipped a switch and it was just like, hey, I got him good. But this is like the legend of George, is that he like fucks with stuff like this during the Nutcracker. Now, I will admit, most of what you can find on the internet regarding supernatural activity at the Capitol Theater in Salt Lake City comes from an episode of a show called Paranormal Witness, which is a show that used to be on the Sci-Fi Channel. It ran for like 3 or 4 seasons. Got canceled, came back a year after being canceled for another season, and then did not get renewed again. During the episode where they cover the Capitol Theater, they did something that I'm actually a big fan of. They interviewed law enforcement about the experiences that they had in the haunted location because they have to file official reports and shit.
I like that. I like that because, a lot of the time, law enforcement isn't like, I believe in ghosts, you know? So when you hear a police officer saying, like, bro, I ran out of there because I saw something, it's like,
well, they have to be
man.
grounded and serious when they deal with stuff, and they shouldn't be escalating a situation. So when they get there, if they've been called in and people are saying, like, I saw a ghost, they're trying to figure out, like, how they can calm down the situation. In this particular case, though, the Salt Lake City County Sheriff's deputy named Dave Murphy had firsthand experience with the Capitol Theater. He actually didn't get called in on a call. He used to work there as a security guard. And he had heard the stories about the theater being haunted when he started, but he was pretty skeptical. He described his feelings on the hauntings prior to working there as, quote, a load of crap, end quote. Quite the wordsmith, Mr. Murphy is. Seriously, though, he was skeptical. He thought it was all bullshit. And I'll go ahead and toss out our disclaimer here since I forgot to do it earlier. This could all be bullshit. But Deputy Dave had his mind changed from working there. The first experience that made him question whether the ghosts were real or were a load of crap was shadows moving around the theater at night. And he thought, like, there shouldn't be people here, but I see things moving around. And then he noticed that they appeared to be moving through the walls, and it really creeped him the fuck out. It wasn't just his eyes playing with them, and it wasn't just a play of the light. It legitimately looked like shadow people were moving around the theater. One night shift, he heard voices coming from behind him. Like when you have people whispering behind you.
No.
And when he turned around, there was no one there. But he knew he heard something. So he searched the theater and couldn't find anyone. And he wound up searching the one place someone could still be hiding, the basement. And when he walked down into the basement, he didn't...
The voice was like, come to the basement.
He didn't see anyone in the basement. But he did notice one odd thing that made him very, very nervous. The basement smelled like smoke. So he searched everywhere, but he could not find a source for the smoke or any fire or anything like that. So he wound up returning to the main floor. In the morning, he told people, like, did the basement smell like smoke last night? I think there might be something wrong. And they told him, like, oh, that's just George. He died in a fire.
If any of you have, like, been to a bonfire or something like that, you guys know what the smell of smoke is.
It's the worst.
And it's
bonfire smoke is way different than, like, house fire smoke, too. Like, I've been near a house fire, and it's like, the smell of people's memories and burning possessions is just like, it's the best.
Oh my God. You guys did not see his stupid face. It's ew.
Ew. Fuck you. Your face is stupid too.
It was just like, I can't describe it because it's so inappropriate.
Inappropriate? What are you even talking about? She's full of shit, y'all. Anyways, so after this whole smoke incident in the basement, things only started to escalate for Dave. He states that he saw way more than that. He saw a woman walk past him dressed in clothes from the early 1900s while he was sitting in the control room and then just sort of disappear. He would hear doors being slammed shut and go to investigate to find them closed or open, despite no one else being in the theater. And then later in the night, hearing them open or slam again and seeing them in the different state that they were in the last time. He'd even start to hear voices and music coming from various parts of the theater when it was empty as well. And before he quit, he said that the ghosts did not like him and they wanted him out of the theater. The shadows that were the first things to start to crack his skepticism turned malevolent towards him. And he stated, quote, it felt just like I got a punch in the chest. Literally, I could not talk. Whatever it was, it had the power to shut me up.
It's because everyone started calling him George.
Yeah, my name isn't George.
Yeah.
And he wasn't alone.
Punching sound. Stop.
A fiscal manager from the Salt Lake County Center for the Arts named Blair Fuller also had something similar happen, just not as chest punchy. He claimed he was working late one night and heard the elevator moving up and down. And when he went to check and see who it was, he noticed that it was moving up and down with no one in it. There was no one operating it, but it kept going from floor to floor with the doors closing.
That's some creepy stuff.
I've seen an elevator operate on its own before and the doors open while I was standing in it. And that shit is fucking terrifying without a doubt. And to have it happen in a place supposedly haunted in the middle of the night would freak me the fuck out. He went back to where he had been working, like his desk, and the file doors above his desk, like where his shelves were, they started to creak open like 2 or 3 inches.
No.
And he looked up, he's like, what the fuck is going on there? And then they just slammed shut like someone just smacked their hand on them. And it freaked him the fuck out. His interpretation of what happened, though, was a bit different than pretty much everyone, like I would know. He stated, quote, in my experience, it's almost like a teenager trying to get some attention, Once you acknowledge that, it stops. But it took me about an hour and a half to get to that point.
I'm just imagining, he's not Jeff, he's not George, Richard standing there, right? Just holding he's holding these cabinet doors, slowly pulling them open. He's like, "You won't call me George, bitch?
Say it. Say my
George."
name.
He just slams it. Oh my god. Oh, you should tell your scary door story.
I have it later on in the script.
Oh, you do you?
Yeah. So this guy's interpretation obviously is one of more like tolerance, where he was able to calm himself down. But other security guards that worked there did not think the haunting was as benign as he did. There's a story about a security guard that was watching the theater during the evening on the security monitors, and he noticed someone was in the seats, the lower level seats, and was like, "That person's not supposed to be there." And he was like staring at him, trying to figure out exactly what row so he could walk out there, because it was still fairly dark. Apparently stages have what's known as like a ghost light, which is like a single light that illuminates the stage in a little bit of light so that you don't have an accident if you're like walking through. And that's what he was able to see this person like through, because the light was just enough where he could see them. As soon as he was getting ready to go downstairs to check on this dude, he saw the dude get blurry, and then the blur just shot across the camera, and he was no longer in the seat. And he was like, "Fuck that." So that is one of the creepier stories from a security guard. But not everyone thinks that the hauntings are legit. I probably shouldn't say legit, though. Not everyone thinks that the hauntings are still occurring. So renovations started on the Capitol Theater in Salt Lake City in like the early 2010s. I think it said like 2013 they started one wave, which was just like basic renovations and general upkeep. That took about a year, and then the second wave was supposed to hit in 2019. 2019 they did more, like they changed seating, more handicap accessible stuff. They made seating wider, essentially, where it doesn't accommodate as many people, but it's a lot more comfortable. So the Salt Lake County Arts and Culture Communications Manager named Cammie Monk doesn't think there is any haunting going on any longer. She said, quote, "There has been talk through the years that there is a ghost here. I have not had any experience with the ghost, and it's not something we usually highlight when we talk about Capitol Theater. But I don't think that he's with us anymore." End quote. No shit, he died in 1949.
What the heck?
This comes from her after renovations were completed, of course, in October of 2019. A year prior to this, I found an article from 2018 in October where not only did the powers that be totally lean into the idea of the haunting, they were going to give ghost stories and ghost tours nightly during the spooky season and charged a measly $65 a person.
Kidding me?
The tour included angel and tarot card readings, a photo booth, a raffle, and a bunch of other theater-related things like a dress rehearsal and a dinner with like the upcoming cast of whatever play was going to be happening.
Okay, $65 for that though, that'd be cool.
But it's like you're totally leaning into the fact that you thought it's haunted. Then the renovations happen. It's like, it's no longer haunted. It's probably because they're going to fucking charge more money. So it's hard to tell on this one. It seems like the theater liked to lean into the haunted history of it until, you know, it wasn't going to bring as much positive attention or might not attract, you know, the crowd that has a little bit more money and are now saying that the hauntings are a thing of the past. It's like new management took over and they're like, we're not going for the haunted angle anymore. I don't think they hired the Winchesters to come along and rid the theater of George. And there's no word about any sort of cleansing rituals performed during the renovations. I don't think hauntings just stop. And if there is a haunting, I can't imagine ignoring it and acting like the ghost has quote unquote moved on is the right way to go about it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the hauntings are really just an old building doing old building shit and people being paranoid because they think it's haunted, but you never know. I can't find anything written about sightings of the ghost since the renovation, so either they're keeping it quiet or it all just randomly went away at a financially convenient time. One last thing, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you thought I was going to talk about your Capitol Theater, I don't blame you, primarily because I almost included an information about the Capitol Theater in Yakima, Washington, that is also haunted. So here's a little bonus super mini topic for all of you. The Capitol Theater up in Yakima opened around the same time, 1920. So very similar times it opened, which is, you know, a reason why I almost overlap the histories. It also had a different name. It was known as the Mercy.
Even that name is way cooler. Before
taking up the moniker of Capitol Theater. And according to the legend of that Capitol Theater, a stagehand named Shorty fell in love with one of the actresses early on in the theater's days. But that actress did not reciprocate the feelings felt by Shorty. And Shorty supposedly took to the catwalks and killed himself directly above the stage.
Okay. That's creepy because there are so many ways that I imagine, that happened. And
there's no specifics on it.
There's no specifics, so my imagination runs wild, but like imagine the type of hauntings that could occur from all these different types of ways that he possibly killed himself.
Like hanging himself.
Yeah, and you just see like the shadow or the figure.
That's probably one of the more common ways people probably thought about it, because like why would you go to the catwalks otherwise? You know?
Right.
It is said that Shorty has haunted the theater ever since taking his own life on that catwalk, slamming the doors to a room that used to be his quote unquote office. I don't know why a stagehand would have an office, and opening it when it's closed. I will now tell my story about the door thing. So earlier today, Robin was at work, and out in California and in Nevada for that matter, it's been really like dark and rainy, and it's been kind of ominous. And I was sitting here and the dogs were in the office with me, and I farted because that's what I do, because I'm at home by myself and it's an office and I can do whatever the fuck I want. And when I did that, like our little Shiba Inu like jumped up and ran to the door, and I was like, oh my God, she's so funny. Somehow she thought my toot sounded like Robin getting home from work. And she stood there and she barked at the door. And I was just like, that's weird, but whatever. And then the other dog got up and walked over to the door and started barking. So I'm like, maybe she is home. And then I heard the door open. And I was like, oh, fuck, she is home. So I got up and I walked over there, and the door had been opened. And like basically, if you go to a door, especially a garage door, like turn the handle, push it open, and then just like set it so that it's like clearly open, but not pushed all the way in. That's what the door was like. And I was standing there like waiting and waiting and waiting. And I noticed that there was like darkness behind the door still. So I opened the door and looked in, and the garage was closed. Her car was not there. And the door just opened on its own. So I let the dogs run in there and search for ghosts, and they said it was fine. Everything was okay. And they came back in, and I was just like, oh, that's weird. I'll tell Robin about it when she gets home. She must not have closed the door when she got home. Or excuse me, when she left. She gets home. I tell her the story. We sit down and we're having dinner. Our cat lays down next to me, and then our corgi, who is just a nightmare of a puppy when it comes to the cat, lays down next to her, and they're like coexisting peacefully. And I'm like, finally. This has finally happened. And 5 seconds later, the fucking garage door opened on its own again. I heard the door open and the dogs freaked out. They ran over there. I walked over and the fucking garage door is open again. So I'm like, maybe she forgot to close it on her way in. Maybe I was the last one in and the door just didn't swing closed. So I fucking deadbolted it and latched it. And I'm like, okay, cool. If there is a ghost, it's going to have a hard time opening it this time. But if it opens again, afterlife confirmed. And I will fucking let you know. Because it was creepy as fuck. Anyways, back to the other Capitol Theater in Yakima. So, stuff goes missing randomly and is found in that room that used to be Shorty's.
Okay.
So people think that's creepy. I think it could just be a tradition to fuck with people by stealing their stuff and putting it in the haunted room. There was also a fire that fucked up that theater, but that one was in the 70s from an electrical short. So yet another thing that happened in a Capitol Theater that involved a fire. Shorty kept doing this thing after the repairs were done, though, still haunts the theater. There are tales of people taking photos of the stage when they're visitors and something blurry is seen that looks like a woman dancing on the stage. A security guard also supposedly saw someone sitting in a seat when no show was happening, went over there to ask the man to leave. When he told him he had to go, the man turned and looked at the security guard and didn't say anything. At that point, the security guard looked towards the man's midsection and realized he had no lower body whatsoever.
No.
The story has nothing else after that. That is the end of that story. So after that scary moment, we are just left to imagine something happened. So my brain immediately came up with, they literally just stood there and stared at each other until the ghost was like, well, this is awkward. And then disappeared. Because I don't know how else it would have happened.
I would have just ran.
I'd have been like, you know what, dog? You stay as long as you need to. In 2010, renovations were also done on this Capitol Theater. See why I almost crossed these stories? So much of this shit just like looks like it's the same place.
Yeah.
And during those renovations, they decided to brick up Shorty's office so you can no longer get in there, but they left the door there. So the door just leads to a brick wall. Side note, there is obviously a secret entrance to this room that I imagine is being used primarily for sex and cocaine.
Because it's a theater?
Why else would you brick up a door, but like leave the actual door frame there and like the opening and closing of the door? It's just really weird. It's a secret hidden room. That's what all secret hidden rooms are used for. Sex and cocaine, obviously. Not because it's a theater, Robin. Jeez. I think if there's anything I've learned doing this topic, it's that theaters in the 20s were really unoriginal at naming themselves. And also employees.
They had good names in the beginning.
Well, yeah, in the beginning. But then in the 20s, they're like, let's just call ourselves the Capitol Theater.
I thought they opened in the 20s.
They did, and they changed their name right away.
Really?
Just like the other one opened in 1913 and changed their name in 1927.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, I learned that employees at theaters apparently die often and have to stay there after death, which objectively fucking sucks. I've also learned that it's probably best to just go see plays at theaters with different names because it doesn't seem like good things happen in Capitol theaters. Although I should say the Dunelands Theater, which is where I grew up, was supposedly haunted also. And I'll have to gather up stories regarding that place because my aunt and my cousins did a bunch of productions there because they used to be involved in a lot of plays. So haunted theaters are definitely a rich vein that I hope to tap into in the future. So I hope you enjoyed it because that, my spooky friends, was the Capitol Theater Hauntings. And I put Hauntings as...
Because it's 2 theaters.
2 theaters. Oh my God.
Nice.
Spoilers.
The only theater I feel like I've actually sat and watched a musical in was the Pantages when we went to go watch Hamilton.
We also went to the one on Broadway when we saw Frozen.
I forgot about that
But I don't remember the name of that theater, to be honest.
I don't remember that one either. It you know what? Broadway is so busy, and there are so many theaters, and
so many plays happening at once.
There's so many plays happening at once, yeah.
It's pretty fucking dope.
And so I don't remember anything. I totally forgot we went to go see Frozen. Shout out to my sister.
How could you let that go?
The song keeps telling me to let it
you.
go. You lined
it up. You
stole
my joke. You stole my joke. You were supposed to be upset about it. Instead, you stole it. Anyways, that's my topic. So we're going to go ahead and take a commercial break before we get to Robin. So see you on the flip side.
Alrighty, so it is now my turn to tell you folks about this little haunting / poltergeist case here.
Welcome to the flip side.
Oh, I forgot that you said to see on the flip side. Okay, this is the flip side. Welcome. We're here. The podcast is flipped. In the history of our podcast, I feel like it's always been Adam that's covered poltergeists. And I've covered like haunted locations or legends and things like that. And I've definitely covered a lot of true crime. But this week it's my turn to cover some creepy supposed poltergeist activity. And for those of you that are wondering or are new to the podcast or even new to all things supernatural, there is apparently a difference between ghosts and poltergeists.
Poltergeist is German for angry ghost. I know because I've covered Poltergeist so many times.
Okay, so a ghost, usually the less menacing of the two entities, is usually thought to be the spirit of someone who is deceased. That's the general thought, right, of what a ghost is. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are inherently good, at least in my opinion.
I mean, people are good and people are bad, so I imagine your ghost would be very similar to how you were in life.
Right. It's definitely dependent on what type of person you were, or they were, when they were alive, and it stems into who or what they become when they pass. Those that are left to wander this world as a restless spirit may hold on to some of the anger that they felt when they were living, and then it translates into a haunting that is anything but innocent, right? Because they're mad and upset and rage and all that fun stuff.
I mean, you might think the afterlife sounds like an awesome time, but sometimes dead's better.
God dang it. So, like, say a child that passes too soon and their spirit gets stuck here. I feel like those are the ones that you feel and are like, hey, can you stop? And then they stop. And then there are poltergeists that are said to be entities or energies, beings that just don't stem from anything human. And it's like something controlled by an outside force of sorts. And poltergeists are said to be the entities that actually move things in order to show that they exist. A lot of people think that ghosts can't move things. It's poltergeists that can like throw your stuff across the room.
I have seen a documentary about Patrick Swayze dying, and he learns that he can move things even though he is a fairly benevolent ghost, although he does have unfinished business with that guy who got him killed. Spoilers.
I have probably only seen bits and pieces of Ghost. I've never really seen the whole thing. Is Patrick Swayze a bad guy? I forget.
No, he's the main character. They usually don't make the main character a bad guy. That would be pretty fucking cool, though. Bad guy dies and comes back to kill the good guy.
No, like if he's like, he lived a pretty rough life. He wasn't the best dude when he was
had
alive.
a sad
he dies.
death, but I don't think they really got too far into like what a piece of shit he was when he was alive.
All right. Anyway, so poltergeists, they tend to impersonate things. So, commonly like the entity of a child, perhaps. And that is absolutely terrifying. When you think of children, you think super innocent, sweet, things like that.
I think monsters.
So when a poltergeist takes the guise of a child, you don't really catch on until it's too late, right? And
what's too late mean? Does that mean you're going to die, or already been tricked?
You've been tricked into thinking that your home is just haunted by something sweet, and then bad things start happening within your home, but it looks like a child, maybe gives you the sense that it's a child, but it's anything but that because it's got ulterior motives. So take the movie Annabelle Creation,
so that's
for example.
Demon, though. That's not a poltergeist.
But it's something that takes the guise of a child. And,
right.
If you haven't watched the movie, skip forward 2 minutes or something. It came out over 5 years ago. If you haven't seen it by now, and you love horror movies, what are you doing?
It came out 10 years ago.
No!
I was working at Tesla when that movie came out. It's 2013. I stopped working at Tesla. I stopped working at Tesla 7 years ago.
Yeah, over 5 years ago.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, the parents speak to this entity that they assume is a child.
Is their child.
It takes over the guise of their child because they're so desperate, right? And something's just not right. And they're so desperate that they allow this thing to take over.
They realize that's not our daughter. And they realize sometimes.
God damn it, dude.
Dad's better.
Oh my God. So only in the movie, only what they thought was a child is actually a horrifying entity. And it's just the fucking worst. And I feel like that's what poltergeists are. They make you think there's something. And it's not. They are here to ruin your lives. But that's what's scary about poltergeists, right? It's always just so much worse. And Paranormal Activity is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
Wow. That's the mashup we need to see. Forrest Gump's crossover with Paranormal Activity.
Forrest Gump is a really good movie. If you haven't seen that movie, you're also missing out, man.
I would say if there was a Forrest Gump, if Forrest Gump was in Paranormal Activity, as soon as something creepy happened, he would just go running again and wouldn't come back for 2.5 years.
Okay. So anyway, what I was getting at with the box of chocolates is maybe they're sometimes benevolent and maybe they're an evil demon who wants to eat your soul. You never know. So in the case of the Cobb family, they really didn't know what they had in store. So in 1998, Al Cobb was living in Savannah, Georgia. He decides to purchase a bed for one of his 14-year-old twin sons. And this wasn't a build your own bed from IKEA thing. This was an antique bed with history stemming back to the 1800s.
So a haunted object for sure.
I mean, it could be a really cool gift. Who does not like vintage, especially in this day and age? Vintage is
don't. You won't go to antique stores or even thrift stores.
Sometimes I think I want to go to an estate sale and I think, nah, I shouldn't.
I check the lots online a lot for estate sales and find the creepiest shit. And Robin's like, don't you fucking dare.
It's okay. Half the stuff has got to be haunted. So Jason Cobb, the recipient of said bed, probably thought, hell yeah, my own bed. This is great. And I'm sure he never thought anything could go wrong with a bed that lived through an entire century.
Sounds like Jason should have listened to Scaryish.
They rearranged the bedroom and placed the bed against one of the walls. The first 2 nights sleeping in the bed were fine, nothing out of the ordinary, just a chill couple of nights of sleep. And then, on the 3rd night, things began to go awry. So Jason claimed to have been awoken by what he described as 2 invisible elbows pressing into his pillow and a cold breath on his neck. It made him feel sick. He went to tell his parents what happened and how freaked out he was. And as with many parents, I'm sure, they shrugged it off as a child dreaming. It was something pretty small, right? They couldn't have thought, you know what? Our house is haunted after this one incident.
Maybe like, hey, I'll spend the night in the bed with you since it's this fancy new bed just to show you it's not haunted.
I mean, kids have crazy imaginations. And at 14,
It's true.
You've probably seen a good number of horror movies or something. Things live in your subconscious. And I don't know. I don't have kids, but I just assume that it's hard to jump to the conclusion that your house is haunted after your 14-year-old tells you, this happened to them while they were sleeping when it comes to the ghost thing. A lot of things could get passed off as coincidence or a natural occurrence. I know sometimes even now I'll have a dream and then I will wake up mid-dream with my arm in the air or my leg in the air, like it feels like I've
never noticed you wake up with your legs in the air. That would be pretty weird.
I think it used to happen a lot more when I was younger, not so much now. I've definitely punched you in my sleep.
Yeah.
I've punched a lot in my sleep in the past. I just am a very violent person when I sleep, apparently.
She has punched me. She has elbowed me. I have been struck a lot of times, and I've struck you in my sleep, but it's only in my dreams.
I've definitely woken up in the midst of hitting Adam, and he's just like, "Are you fucking serious right now?" And I'm just like, "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'm so sorry."
She invades my space. She takes up 90% of the bed to get as close to me as she can so she can inflict maximum damage when she strikes me in the night.
Anyway, so on day 4, Jason enters his room. He finds the picture of his deceased grandparents that he kept on his bedside table, flipped face down. It could have been shaking or something that could have just flopped it over. I've had pictures fall down before. It happens. So Jason thought nothing of it. He just propped it back up and then went about his day. And then it happened again. The picture wasn't just on its face this time, though. It was completely moved. It was sitting in the middle of the bed. And even creepier, it wasn't the only thing on the bed. Apparently, it looked like someone had taken random objects from around the room and placed them on the bed surrounding the photo in a circular pattern.
Get rid of the bed. Just get rid of the fucking bed.
So this alarmed Jason, obviously, and so he went to his parents. Eventually, the whole family came into the room wondering what was upsetting him so much. And they all looked at the situation that they had on their hands, and Al, his dad, asked aloud, "Do we have a Casper?"
Wow.
And they definitely didn't get a Casper mattress. I
don't think Caspers were around back then.
No, that's the joke. So for you young people who have never seen Casper, it's a movie.
No, it's a comic before it was a movie.
Oh my God. But the popular thing, that I grew up with was the movie Casper. And it was about a friendly ghost.
The friendliest ghost you know.
Yeah. Bill Pullman, he plays Christina Ricci's dad.
Christina Ricci was just like the same age as me in all these movies, and she was my crush for so long.
Okay, what's funny about that is Bill Pullman was my crush.
I don't blame you. He was so charming, dude.
Christina Ricci was your crush. I just think it's so funny. So Al the dad, he continues to ask any possible spirits in the room for their name and age, and they heard nothing. They didn't hear anything. But he went and grabbed some paper, grabbed some crayons, and placed them on the bed. And they all left the room for approximately 15 minutes or so, something around there. When they returned, all the questions had been answered.
Get the fuck out of here.
Everything that they asked physically in the room was answered on this piece of paper. So the spirit's name was Danny. That's what they got out of this. And they were supposedly 7 years old.
Okay, so you're telling me, does this story end with there was a person living inside the bed all along?
No.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to try and spoil it.
That would have been crazy, though.
Yeah, because
that would have been a better ending.
How else is this shit getting answered? It's just, I'm very skeptical with this topic now.
It's a poltergeist.
Poltergeists don't know how to write. They know how to move shit and be dicks. But write? That seems odd.
If they can suck a home into the ether, they can do whatever they want.
Can they?
Isn't that what happens in Poltergeist?
The end of the original, yeah, I suppose that is what happens.
If you guys haven't watched Poltergeist, that movie came out so long ago. Spoilers.
I ether. I always pictured it being sucked into the nether. Jesus Christ, Robin. For your
Holy
book.
shit. I will fucking cut you. Oh my God. Anyway, over the span of weeks, Al would continue to attempt to communicate with this spirit / poltergeist. And the spirit went on to describe themselves as having brown eyes and hair.
Not anymore, motherfucker.
What? They still do. They're just a spirit.
Okay, they don't literally look like Casper. You know that, right?
Oh, okay. Got it. Got it. But anyway, real descriptive. Like half the world probably has brunette hair and brown eyes. It's just the more, what is it called? Dominant gene. Man, I hope our kids have blue eyes because your mom does, and it would be.
We have a very small percentage that our kids will have black hair, that's high percentage black hair, but blue eyes that look like Sterling Archer. Be beautiful.
You just want our kids to look. You've said you wanted our kids to look like Sterling Archer since I met you.
Yeah, because he's beautiful.
Oh my god. Anyway, weird things would keep happening. So drawers would open and close on their own. Furniture would get moved or flipped. Candles were getting lit randomly on their own. Apparently, the dining room table...
That's dangerous as fuck.
The dining room table would randomly get set.
Wow.
That's...
doing chores and everything.
Yeah,
huh?
that's pretty nice. Posters would get arranged to spell out Jill on the bedroom wall. I don't know how that would happen.
Who the fuck is Jill?
One of the spirits.
Oh my god.
Based on the information that was obtained, it seems that Danny was a boy whose mom died in that bed in 1899, which, fun fact, is the year that Fred Astaire was born.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember I had a freaking Fred Astaire phase when I was in high school, and I looked up...
You would be a fucking Fred Astaire kid. Oh my god.
I grew up on like TMC, man. And so I watched so much Fred Astaire and stuff like that, and so I just... When I learned that he was born in 1899 when I was younger, I was like, he was born like in a different century? No wonder he's so different.
So were we.
Oh, God. Anyway, that singing tap dancing fiend wasn't born in our century, and he is a league above.
Did you know they're going to be doing a Fred Astaire biopic?
I fucking told you that yesterday.
And Tom Holland is going to be Fred Astaire?
Oh my
Very
God.
excited for that. I heard that on my own.
God.
Completely
Guys.
independently of you.
Fuck. You're such a dickhead. Anyway, Danny claimed...
Aren't you happy that I listened to you?
Oh. Danny claimed that he wanted to stay close to this mystery bed. He also was adamant that no one sleep in his mother's bed. They literally found a note that said, quote, "No one sleep in bed."
How the fuck is he
End
writing?
quote.
Does he have his own stationery?
He's got fucking crayons and paper.
Wow. I would be haunting these people too if they gave me crayons to write with.
He's a kid.
He's not a kid. He's a fucking liar. That's what he is. He's not a fucking kid.
Anyway, I think getting a note that just says "No one sleep in bed," very creepy.
Cool. I bought a bed that I can't sleep in, Danny. Welcome to the curb. Enjoy the fucking dumpster, asshole.
So he did write notes that said sorry on them, but...
Okay, everything's fine now.
I'm sure when they threatened to throw out the bed, he's like, sorry. But when it came to those notes, no one in the family really understood what the sorry notes were for. At this point, Jason was no longer using this bed as his, bed. There's no way. He had actually moved out of his room by then and went to sleep with his twin brother. And I personally shared a bed with my younger sister till I was 16, around there. So it's if you gotta do what you gotta do.
As someone who shares a bed with you, I can assure you it's not aight.
That's
It's crowded.
I don't know. Who wants to sleep in the same room as demons, though?
No one.
Exactly.
Get rid of the bed.
So one day, Jason decides to lay on it just to see what would happen. And, I mean, curiosity killed the cat. This didn't kill Jason. It was just something that was a little unfortunate. So after laying there for a while, nothing happened. But as soon as he got up from the bed, a terracotta plate that was hanging on the wall flew off of the wall straight at him, barely missed him, and crashed and broke into the closet door.
Sounds okay. I've made up some lies in my day for how I broke shit, and I would definitely blame the demon bed if I broke a terracotta plate. Just saying.
So sometimes the notes that were left would start arguments or just like small bouts of drama within the family. So one of these notes told Jason's brother Lee to stop smoking, which I'm sure caused some issues. Things like that things that would get the family riled up, and then it would play games like tic-tac-toe. So there was an instance where they put a tic-tac-toe grid on a piece of paper in the room. And when they came back, it was just filled with O's and said, and the note on it said, "Ha ha, beat you."
Okay, this is horseshit. I can't stand this crap any longer. If you're a spirit and you're like just trying to burn through eternity, there's no way you would fuck with someone who's trying to play a game with you. I'm sorry. Like, you would just be like, "Oh, thank Christ." And you'd be like, "All right, let's try and win this shit."
Eventually, one spirit became more. Jason claimed to be able to sense spirits now. Like, he was starting to gain these powers. And he even started saying that he started saying that he could see them, and claimed that there were a number of these spirits within the home. He started being able to see Danny. In one instance, he told his father that Danny was in the master bedroom humming and writing with crayons. And when Al ran to the room, he found a still moving pair of scissors balancing itself on a lotion bottle. And he also found a coloring book page signed with Danny's name. Now that could be Danny, or it could be Jason being a teenager, wanting to pull a prank, or just wanting a little extra spotlight or extra attention or something like that. But Jason claimed that there was a spirit named Uncle Sam who was there, whose daughter was buried under the house. Supposedly he was there to quote unquote claim her, whatever that means. I mean, either her body, her soul, whatever.
So now we're way past this fucking bed. Now we have all these spirits living here, and the house has got a body buried underneath it. I'm
sure there's a source out there that knows for sure what that note actually said, but I couldn't find like a repository of all these notes that were written. But Jason also claims that there's a spirit named Gracie, who was a young girl buried in the Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah. And looking at the picture of the girl's grave, it looks like I may have done a topic on that cemetery or on her before.
Cool.
So it sounds really familiar. And the statue of her and her gravesite, everything looks really familiar. So I think I have covered that cemetery before. And then there was Jill. So this is supposedly a young woman who had apparently been leaving a number of handwritten messages herself. And one of these was actually an invitation to a party in the Cobbs' living room. Apparently Jill knows how to get riggedy wrecked in the afterlife. Wow. She's like, "Come have a party." Anyway, these claims weren't necessarily investigated in depth, but there was an investigation by a parapsychologist named Andrew Nichols. He was head of the Florida Society for Parapsychological Research, and went to investigate the Cobbs. So it was actually filmed for a show called 48 Hours.
Okay.
With another parapsychologist named William Roll. And once I saw this, it really made me think that all of it was for attention, but it's not my place to judge. I just know that we've watched like that Demon House thing, not even the whole thing. We've watched half of it. But there was no video evidence caught of anything paranormal happening within the home. What he did find out was that Jason's room had a very strong electromagnetic field within its walls, and apparently something to do with the electric wiring within it. Nichols believes that this electromagnetic field is what allowed for spirits or energy or psychic abilities to manifest. So, though this is an interesting case, it's not necessarily answered exactly. There's no definitive evidence like this is real or whatnot, right? And it is fairly commonly known that areas or homes that are within areas of high electromagnetic activity do experience strange things. So if your home is like built under a bunch of those electrical towers with all the cables and stuff hanging over you, a lot of those hauntings tend to happen under these areas.
Don't health problems also happen under those areas too?
So, it's it's kind of interesting. I don't know how credible the science is with that.
Probably not very.
But who knows? Maybe his room was like a portal or something. You don't know.
The idea that you can mess around with like electromagnetic fields and somehow gain psychic abilities, for me, is a little bit of a dubious thing to like believe, because then you just put fucking car battery hooked up to your nipples and be psychic in the next day.
I don't know how electromagnetic that would make you. That's just straight up AC/DC current, bruh.
Sounds pretty awesome to me.
But yeah, it went from starting off with this bed that they bought to something a little bit different. If they had never bought that bed, it should have happened anyway, because if the wiring was in the walls, you know what I mean? But why it started when they bought the bed, who knows? I just think that's pretty interesting. I don't know how credible any of it really is, again, with the science and all that. But this whole thing really gave me Enfield Poltergeist vibes.
Because it was fake as fuck.
I can't say it was fake as fuck, but like, it's just, you don't know, right? You have investigators coming in and they're like, well, this is possibly the cause. But maybe there was something about the house. Maybe it sits on something we just don't know, or, you know, there's no way for us to know for sure that something existed there. And imagine being that family, right? And they're like, bro, no, my kid is psychic and no one cares. No one believes us because y'all think we're crazy. It's just, ugh. I don't know.
I don't think they're crazy. And I will admit that there's just, you know, like, you could never truly know unless someone just admits to being full of shit. But I think there's a hard and fast rule on my end, and that's ghosts don't write notes.
Poltergeist.
They just don't do it. Like, demons don't write notes. Like, they manipulate objects, but they don't manipulate pen and are articulate enough to write a note.
I think they can.
I don't. Every fucking ghost story I've ever heard where someone found a note written by a phantom, it was a person fucking with someone. Every single time. And the fact that there's like no evidence, no one saved the notes. Yeah, you know why? Because the first thing they do is check the handwriting. And they'd be like, so your son Jason's a fucking sociopath, because it looks like he's been the one writing the notes the whole time. If they said like, oh, we put like a thing that it could sway like yes or no, and we asked yes or no questions, and that's how we ascertain the information, that's a bit different. Because the idea that there's a fucking ghost out there that can lift a pen or pencil, press it down on paper enough to not destroy the paper, but gently enough where that the ink or that the lead will come off, and then they can actually just write it out. Like, it's just like it was so hard for Patrick Swayze to push that shoe. Like, fuck right off. Hey, there's no way.
An Annabelle creation.
There's no notes.
They did. Yes.
Who wrote the fucking notes?
She literally writes, "Come find me."
I don't remember that.
Bro, we gotta watch it again. I love that movie.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. It's one of the best Conjuring universe movies, I believe. And there's a lot of those things, too. Like The Nun. That movie sucks.
That movie is
terrible.
Garbage.
Trailer was really good, though. Scared the shit out of everyone in that theater.
Yep.
Excellent trailer. Terrible movie.
Terrible movie.
But yeah, the haunting stories I try and like buy into because it's one of those things where I do find them very entertaining, but there's just so many details about this that seem like it's complete and fucking utter bullshit. And it just triggers my skepticism in ways that it's hard for me to measure. So yeah, that's my personal opinion on it. If they would have been like, they would like, ask questions and then Jason would become possessed or black out and he'd realize he was writing stuff. That for me, I'm like, fuck
this
yeah.
This is real life. That's not a horror movie.
That's something that's more realistic than, like the ghost phantomly wrote answers to the notes. That's why I was like, so there's a person living in this bed, right? They keep popping out and like writing shit and moving objects.
It'd be crazier if someone was living in the walls.
Yeah. That'd be cool and believable. So.
Like The Boy?
Don't ruin movies for everyone. I knew you were going to do that.
Hey, it's so old. If you haven't
seen it. It's less old than the other movie you already spoiled.
No, over 5 years ago.
They said over 5 years. Every movie ever from 2018 and before is over 5 years ago. You stupid asshole.
Okay, anyway, that's the story of the Danny Poltergeist.
Wasn't bad. I had some issues with it, but you told it very well. And it was well researched. So good stuff, Robin.
thanks, even though you're such a rude douche.
I wasn't rude. I was funny and charming. Anyways, if you have stories that you would like to send our way, please feel free to do so. You can email storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, click on contact us, fill out that form, it comes directly to us, or hit us up on our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scaryish podcast, Twitter is @scaryish_pod, and Instagram is @scaryish_podcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scaryish podcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1 due. And if you're not into the monthly subscription type thing, you can also go to coffee, ko-fi.com/scaryish podcast. And yeah, all your donations go to helping us keep this podcast going.
Indeed. Thank you so much for everyone who supports us. It means the world to us, and we're going to keep bringing it to you for as long as we are physically able. Sometimes we aren't, and you guys told us that's okay to take a week off if you need to, so we appreciate all the support we had when we were sick, too. It means a lot. It really does.
It's nice to get a break.
Yeah, especially when you need it. It's like it's nice for people to be like, dude, relax, stay in bed, don't record. And
we just want you guys to have quality content, and how we sounded was not quality content.
It would have been like two hot piles of garbage rubbing up against one another. It would have sounded as bad as it smelled, is all I'm saying. So we're better now, and we thank you for understanding. So that is everything we have for episode 258. Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.